Okay, well, back to the Prefect, and I have now taken off the fuel pump. It sits, let's just have a look on the spare engine, actually, it's a bit easier to see. It sits down there, so the exhaust manifold goes along there, and the fuel pump sits beneath it there. And I've got the suspicion that it's not actually doing anything, and when you operate it, this is the lever that actuates the fuel pump, and it should make like a sucking sort of burping noise, but all it's doing is moving. It's not actually making any of the sucking noise that you'd normally expect, and that would explain why there's no fuel being pulled up from the tank and the car won't start. So there's more evidence of red gasket loop here, so someone's been messing about here at some point in the past, but clearly that's not doing anything at all. So we'll take this back off again, have a quick peer inside, and somewhere I'm sure I've got one or two overhaul kits for these. This is an AC petrol pump, and I think the fuel kits are fairly plentiful. You can buy the kits to overhaul these fairly easily, as far as I remember, but I'm sure I've got one somewhere. So anyway, let's have a quick look inside and just see if there's anything obvious. Now, within the fuel pump there is a rubber diaphragm. It fits in there, so if you remove all those screws, I'm not sure if I can see that very well, if you remove those screws, that red bit there is a rubber diaphragm, and it relies on that to create the suction to pull the fuel up from the tank. So I think the next thing to do is, there's a few old kits in this box here for the old AC pumps. I don't quite remember which model this is, maybe written on there somewhere, but hopefully buried amongst these different kits there's a BD1, BD3, there's even an old one here, an original Ford packaging. So hopefully somewhere amongst this various random assortment of fuel pump repair kits we'll find sufficient parts to overhaul this pump here. So I'm going to have a quick route through here and see what we can find. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that amongst this lot there will be something that will fit this here. So the next thing to do is to remove the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws that hold the two halves of the AC pump together. Then we'll just see what diameter the diaphragm is inside there, and hopefully one of these will fit, or maybe something in here, I don't know. I mean, this is stuff that's been accumulated over 30 years. Any spare bits I just chuck in this box, and because you never know when you might need it. So anyway, let's crack on with this. Well, this is what the diaphragm looks like. This is one of the new ones. I'm not quite checked to see if this is the right one, but it gives you a pretty good idea, and it looks close. And there's the one inside the pump itself, and it goes that way round like that. And this peg here, it's got a little cutout in it there, you can just about see there, a little cutout notch. So you push it down, twist it, and then it sort of pings out. That's the theory. So as this one looks fairly clogged up inside, let's put that somewhere safe in there so it doesn't get mucky as it falls out. Right, I'll whiz this one out hopefully. So push it down, twist it, and hopefully, there we go, it should come out. There's a spring that holds it all together, so we'll dismantle that, clean it up a bit, and just make sure we've got the right one here. We have to check to make sure that this little sort of tab here is the right length, everything fits properly, and hopefully put it back together and see where we are from there. The other thing that can sometimes go wrong is you've got little valves in there, so that's another thing that probably wants checking out there, held in place by those two screws. Take those two screws out and it pulls a little sort of mounting plate out. That lets you get at these as well, so that's the next thing to check, if replacing the diaphragm doesn't make any difference. While I've got the top off, I've removed the two valves that sit in there. I removed the two screws that hold it all together, and I found in one of the bags a couple of new AC valve, I suppose they're valves, I'm not quite sure what the proper word is, but they will do the trick. So I'll pop those in, because I think they're the right ones. Well, it's all apart, and I'll put those in there. I've cleaned it out a little bit in there, and the pump can all go back together. It's got the new diaphragm in, so that's the pump. Obviously that's the lever that operates the pump, and this goes up and down, plunges up and down, and that's what draws the fuel through. And these valves, the fuel goes through here. So as I've got some new ones in this little bag here, proper old stock stuff, it may as well go into the pump, and then hopefully it's kind of a fit and forget type thing. These AC pumps are usually pretty good, so once they're right, they're usually right, but this one's obviously been sat for 50 years and I guess is objecting to being woken up from its slumbers, so it's not surprising that it needs a little bit of an overhaul. Well, it's 2022 now, so Happy New Year to everyone, and the AC fuel pump is back together. I refitted the top piece. There's a new rubber ring seal under the lid there, and there's also a new seal under the little bolt there. So that's all back together and tickety-boo, and it sounds a lot healthier now. There's a proper sort of, I don't know if the microphone will pick this up or not, but it sounds like it might actually do something. So I think the next plan is I will pop that back on the car. It's a bit of a fiddly thing to do, so I won't go filming that because I can't. I'll pop that back on and then just see if it'll draw up the fuel from the tank finally, and if it does, then I don't think there'll be any problems with getting the engine to fire up again. Now, if you watched the previous video, you'll know that we took the top off this spare engine that's down here. This is an 1172cc engine. We put a bit of diesel down each cylinder and we left that for a few days to pickle. All the diesel has disappeared, so that means it's run down past the ring, so hopefully this engine will actually turn over. I'm just going to try it now. I haven't pre-tried it, so this may or may not work, but let's see. There we go. Yep. I genuinely hadn't tried that, so that turns over. So what I'm going to do now, before I turn it over too much more, is put some heavier oil, some 2050 or whatever's in the oil can, down each bore, and then we'll just turn it over a few times and make sure that all the valves are working properly and none of them are sticking open. Not quite sure what oil's in this particular oil can, but it'll do the job, so it doesn't really matter. Well, that's got plenty of oil around things, and everything appears to work. The valves look good, it's all been decoked, so the head can go back on loosely for now, and it'll just sit there nicely covered in oil inside, which is what I wanted it to be, because it was actually quite dry in there. It may be that when my attention turns to the little Ford van, the E83A, it's quite oily and clagged up inside the engine that's in the van, and some of the valves are burnt, some of the exhaust valves are burnt, so it may be even easier to drop this engine in and then fix up the van engine once it's out of the vehicle itself. So that's something that I might have to look into at some point, but I think for now we'll just pop this head back on and carry on with the Prefect. I just wanted to say a quick thanks to Gary over in Arizona. A package arrived in the post the other day, and he was kind enough to send over a couple of new additions to the tool kit in the garage. First off is this lovely old Kismet car field service gauge, tyre pressure gauge. This was actually made in Sheffield. I don't know if the camera will pick up the writing on that or not, but somehow this made it all the way from Sheffield to Arizona, and now it's back in the UK again. So thanks very much for that, Gary. And not only did he send that tyre pressure gauge, he also sent this intriguing little spanner, which is, I mean, I'm not quite sure what it's for, but it's obviously designed with accessing something very fiddly in mind. It's got the letters WRHL and the numbers 177 on it. So if anyone recognises that, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, just wanted to give a quick thanks to Gary, a quick shout out, and I really appreciate you sending these over all the way from sunny Arizona. Well, it's another day, and of course it's raining, just about like it seems to be doing every day at the moment. I can really hear it on the roof. But just one more thing I wanted to say about these AC pumps before I fit this back on. There's a couple of things you really need to bear in mind when you're putting them back together. This is the diaphragm that I actually took out. And when you put them in, you pop them in, as you can see there's like a little tab on the bottom there. You put them in, and then once this engages in the hole that's on the end of the operating arm here, you have to twist this through 90 degrees, and that locks it in. The second important thing to remember is, because then if you just put the top of the pump back on, tighten up the screws and away you go, the pump will make promising noises, but it probably won't work properly. What you have to do is, once this is in, you put the top half back on to the bottom and you just pop the screws in, but you don't tighten them up. Then once you've got all the screws in, you hold the operating lever against the body as far as it'll go, and only then do you tighten up the screws. That way the diaphragm is in the correct position to work properly once you release this, and then you obviously, when you fit it back on the car, if you don't tighten the screws up with the arm fully back, it's not going to work properly. So that's something worth bearing in mind. And these AC pumps were fitted on so many different cars, so what applies on the little Ford here is equally applicable to sort of pre and post-war Austins, etc., that used the AC pump. So I just thought I'd give that a mention, just in case you're planning on taking your AC mechanical fuel pump apart. But now, today's task, hopefully, is to refit this pump, which I think should work now. If it doesn't, I'll just give up and buy another one, but I would like to fit the original pump back on if I can, and with all new innards it should, by rights, work. But what should happen and what does happen aren't always the same thing, so I'm going to crack on with this. It's a horrible job fitting this on, even though it's only held on with 2 bolts that fit in there. It's a really, especially this one, it's a really fiddly job to get that in there, so I'm not looking forward to this. So the sooner I crack on with it, the sooner I'll get it done. Right, well, the fuel pump's back on, but I was still struggling to get it to pull out fuel. Spinning it on the starter or using the hand primer, it just wasn't bringing anything up at all. So in the end, I decided to rig up a gravity fuel feed and get the engine running on the gravity feed in the hope that the pump would finally maybe prime up and pull the fuel up. And looking at that, it did run for quite a while, and then it suddenly started splurting fuel out of the fuel pump because I left the outlet of the pump off so that it could sort of prime itself through. So I'm hoping that if I reconnect the pump to the carburettor, that it'll actually run off the fuel in the tank now. At least that's the hope. So that's the next thing to do, I think. Well, now that the fuel pump's back in place on the Prefect, I thought it'd be quite interesting to have a look at this repair charges for Anglia and Prefect booklet issued by Ford themselves in the early 1950s. In fact, by appointment to the late King George VI. So that kind of dates it for you. And yeah, this really lists out all the jobs that you could realistically expect to have done on your Anglia or Prefect during its life. And this was printed in January of 1952. And if we go through here, like I say, it just describes all these jobs and the costs that they would incur. So, for example, change a wheel on the Anglia or the Prefect, that would cost 6 shillings, so 30 pence. There's some of the other jobs there, I'll just go through those there. Front axle, replacing springs, all that kind of thing, because these are all jobs that you'd have to do every now and again on your car back in the 1950s. Braking, fit a handbrake cable, that's £1, 1 shilling and 6pence. So it goes on. Steering gear, the rear axle, because these were all service items. Replace universal joint, £1, 13 shillings and 6pence on both the Anglia and the Prefect. Carry on a little bit further, we've got engine, tune the engine. So Anglia, of course that was the 8 horse 933cc or the 1172 Ford Prefect engine, was £1, 0 shillings and 6pence to have that done at your local Ford garage. A few other jobs there. Engine, replace cylinder head and the sump. Hopefully those are all showing up okay. And if we go a little bit further on, past the cooling system, there we go. Replace both radiator hoses, 3 shillings and 6pence. We should have, there we go. Overhaul fuel pump, which is the job we've just done on the Prefect, of course, and that would cost you the princely sum of 17 shillings on the Anglia or the Prefect. It's basically the same engine. So there you go. I'd have happily paid someone 17 shillings if I could get that done in modern money for the same price. That'd be very nice. But yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting just to have a look at this little booklet, just to give an idea of the costs involved in running a car back in the early 1950s. Obviously, the value of money has changed somewhat since then, but it's an interesting little booklet anyway. Well, this is running again now, and from the fuel in the tank. So the pump's working now correctly as it should do. The exhaust is blowing still, so I'm going to have to revisit that, but at least she's running again off the key, which is what the objective was really, just to get it back to where I was before. I'm really pleased that it's the pump's now doing its job. I've also installed that new pipe onto the vacuum wiper takeoff from the manifold now as well. Now, moving inside the car, I just wanted to have a look at something, because I noticed when the engine's running you get like a hissing sound when you turn the engine off. And I've noticed that this pipe here, this is the parcel tray, this pipe here, which connects to the vacuum wiper feed from the manifold, is not connected to the vacuum wiper motor itself, which explains why the motor doesn't do anything at all. So I think the next little job to do, because I'm fed up of working on the carburettor, is to find a little bit of tubing and reconnect this up. So I just need to find some small diameter pipe, and I can reconnect the wiper motor up, clean this connector up here, and hopefully that'll bring the motor back to life again. But like I say, I need to find some of this first, which I may or may not have. So I need to go and get the box of piping and have a look, see what's in there. Right, so I've had a route around and I've found some very, very thin hosing. So I've cut myself a small length of that. So I'm going to try that, just see if it brings the wiper motor back to life. Well, that's now reconnected, and I've sprayed a little bit of lubricant around the mechanism as best as I can get at. So let's fire the engine up and just see if the wipers actually work now. Right, engine's on. W for wipers. Hey, is it going to do something? They're a bit slow. Maybe they need a little bit of help. Slowly, slowly. Oh. Anyway, that was just a bit of fun, just to see if I could persuade the wipers to come back to life. The priority really is to concentrate on jobs that need doing underneath with the car jacked up, because I want to get the car back on its wheels sooner rather than later, because little Dodge at the back there is blocked in, I can't get it out. So I need to prioritise cleaning up the underside, checking the brakes, greasing it wherever necessary, sort out that blowing exhaust, which still appears to be blowing, and then at least it can get back on its wheels and I can move it in and out and carry on with the other jobs that it needs in order to get it to run. Well, the next job to do while the car is up in the air is just give it a cursory clean up, just so it's clean enough to handle and see what's going on. Obviously I'm not going for concours, none of this is going to get painted really, it's just going to get oily ragged, but I need to clean up the bits of mud, clean off the flaky stuff first. But overall it's pretty good under here. And just spread some oil around, make sure these grease nipples are clear so we can lubricate the kingpins, and do the same on the other side, and really just do all that, and again progress things that need to be done while the car is up in the air, because as soon as it's back on its wheels a lot happier I'll be. So I think that's going to be the main focus for the next few days. So I think I'll wrap up this particular video. Please have a look around the rest of the channel. There's a few videos about the Prefect on here now, also the Anglia and other things. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and more videos will be here before too long. Bye for now.